Okay, Year 7, welcome to your tutorial on decimals. Today we are going to be looking at place value with decimals and ordering. It's pretty straightforward, most of it should be a revision. Okay, you'll need to write this down. Well, firstly you actually would have needed the heading, so sucked in if you missed it. Anyway, what are decimals and what are we going to be looking at today? You don't have to write this bit down, that one's a little bit irrelevant, but basically what I'm trying to say is decimals are absolutely everywhere in our world today. We use them all the time, from counting out money to adding things up. Like every time you go to the shops, there's no way that you'll buy something for $5 flat. It'll always be $5.99, $5.25. We use decimals all the time. This is what you do need to write down. Unlike a whole number, a decimal is used to represent part of a whole. Okay, 5 is an example of a whole number. Okay, an example of a decimal would be 5.14. I don't have just 5 wholes. I have 5 wholes and a little bit. This point I put in here, this decimal, this dot here, is a decimal point, and it's used to represent the whole. It's used to separate, the whole number from the decimal or the part of a whole. Okay, so decimals, not whole numbers, slightly different. Okay, they're used to represent parts of a whole. So when dealing with numbers with a decimal point, place value, our mate, not Roman numerals, is very, very important. Place value becomes really important. So we're going back to what we did right back at the start of term. However, we only did place values with whole numbers. We're going to be looking at place values with decimal points. For some of you, this will hopefully be a revision from primary school. Okay, you'll need to draw this table down, and it does look a little bit confusing to start with, so let me explain it to you. I've got this decimal here, 428.357. Okay, the 4, the 2, and the 8 are place values that I already recognise from the start of last term. 4 is in the hundredths place value, 2 is in the tenths place value, and the 8 is in the units place value. Now, there's a few different ways I can represent that 4. In here, I can just say it's 4 hundredths, or 4 times 100, or 400. That's what that 4 represents in that place value. These are just the 3 different ways I can represent it. Okay, the 2 in this decimal, okay, is in the tens place value. Again, I can either write that as 2 times 10, or 20. So I can write 2 tens, 2 times 10, or 20. Okay, doesn't matter which way I write it. Furthermore, the 8 is in the units place value. I think this is getting a bit explanatory. 8 times 1, or 8, are the way I can write it. 8 units, 8 times 1, or 8. Now, this decimal point, like I just said, is used to separate the whole number from the fraction or the part of a whole. Once I get down to past the decimal place, to the right of the decimal place, these are my place values. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and we keep on going, tens of thousands, but we're not going to worry about that for the moment. Okay? These are the ways I can represent the 3. The 3 is in a place value I like to call my tenths place value. So the 3 is in the tenths place value. I can either say it's 3 tenths, or I can say 3 times 1 over 10. Because 1/10, that's the tenths place value, and then I've got 3 of them. So 3 tenths. Or I can represent it as 3 over 10. They're my 3 options. 3 tenths, 3 times 1 over 10, or 3 over 10, or 3 tenths. Doesn't matter which way you want to write it. Fifths place value is hundredths, 5 hundredths, 5 times 1 over 100, or 5 over 100. It's 5 hundredths. Okay. The 7 is in my thousandths place value. I can either write that as 7 thousandths, 7 times 1 over 1,000, or 7 over 1,000. Okay. The main idea, if this table's confusing you, don't fret. The main idea is the place values you need to remember. Tenths, hundredths, and thousandths after the decimal point. I've just given you an example and filled in the values in this table. Okay, I would like you to please, however, draw this table down with the example. Okay, so let's have a look at these ones just really quickly. I've got two decimals, 12.85 and 6.1287. Okay, 6.1287. So the first question says, what is the value of the digit 8 in the following numbers? Here's my decimal point. Okay, it is in the first place value. I know that the first place value is the tenths column. So I can either write tenths. However, remember that other way we just learned was I can also write it as 8 over 10. Okay, 8 over 10. Let's have a look at this one. Okay, this one here is in my 6.1287. Here's my decimal spot. It's not in the tenths. It's not in the hundredths. It is in the thousandths. So the value of 8 I can either write as thousandths. Woohoo! Or 8 over 1,000. Okay. For the time being, I would prefer you to represent them in these ways, guys. So 8 over 10 or 8 over 1,000. Isn't that interesting? That's a decimal. But I've just represented the place value as a fraction. Maybe decimals and fractions might be related a little bit more than I thought. Anyway. Okay, so if they're related, let's see what else I can do. Express each of the following proper fractions and mixed numerals as decimals. 7 over 10, that's a fraction. Oh, but wait, hold on. I just looked at place value, didn't I? Okay, so if I've got 7 tenths, that tells me that's in my tenths place value. I know when I do a decimal, I'm going to do 0 and a dot. I know my tenths place value. Is it the first one or the second one? Oh, it's the first one. So if I've got 7 tenths, I could represent that as a decimal as 0.17. Okay, what about this one? I've got 5 over 100. Oh, that must be in my hundredths place value. So that's saying I have 5 hundredths. So I'll put the 0 there in the decimal point. It's not a tens. Oh, it's a 5. 5 hundredths. So I can represent that fraction as a decimal. Fractions and decimals, they're kind of like exactly the same thing. Interesting. Okay. Now I've got a tricky one. I've got one of those mixed numeral ones. Oh, darn. I've got 3 and 17 over 100. Now, when I was doing fractions, I remember that a mixed numeral, when I was doing those, I was saying I have some wholes and then I have a fraction. A mixed numeral was a whole number and then a fraction. Okay, so that must mean I have, if I've got 3 and 17 over 100, I've got 3 wholes and then or 3 units, and then I'll do my decimal point, and 17 hundredths. Now, if I do this, 0 point, it's not in the tenths, and then I go 1, 7, that's not right. That's saying I have 100th and 7 thousandths. Oh, okay. So maybe I have to relook at this a little bit. Okay, if I've got 17 hundredths, okay, one of them must be in my tens, and the other one must be in my hundredths. Okay, so that would be how I'd represent 3 and 17 over 100. Okay, that's not too bad. That makes sense. Surprise! Decimals and fractions are just two different ways of representing the same thing. Woo!